I would now like to introduce Nakai Fondon, UMass Amherst alumna and member of Women for UMass Amherst, to give a few words on our underwriter, Women for UMass Amherst, and to introduce our keynote speaker, former Olympian Briana Scurry.
Thank you for having me here today. Hello, my name is Nakai Fondon, and I am a UMass alumna and member of Women for UMass Amherst, known as WFUM. When I was a UMass student, I studied marketing and graduated in 2017. As a student, I was vice president of SOCA, which is the Student of Caribbean Ancestry Club, and public relations coordinator for Student Bridges. And because of those experiences, I learned about leadership and the power of connections that could lead to greater things for my future. Now, as the donor engagement coordinator for the Community Foundation of Western Massachusetts and creator/host of a podcast, I volunteer with WFUM to stay connected with UMass. WFUM is a community of alumni who make deep and lasting impact on the lives of current students. It funds student-focused projects that provide access, support, and opportunity for UMass Amherst students, with preference to those projects that positively impact UMass Amherst women and their respective communities. Since its founding in 2012, WFUM has raised and given out over $250,000 for 68 projects that support a variety of initiatives. I am so proud to be part of this community of women that works with students to help them bring their projects to UMass and its communities. Today, I am here as a representative of WFUM to introduce the keynote speaker for the Women of Eisenberg Conference. For 7 consecutive years, WFUM has provided funding for different aspects of the conference. During this time of social distancing, we were excited to learn of the Women of Eisenberg's decision to provide a virtual conference in 2021. This year, WFUM is the underwriter for the keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker today is Briana Scurry, a former UMass political science student who played on the soccer team from 1990 to 1993. A member of the National Soccer Hall of Fame, she is known as one of the sport's most talented and influential goalkeepers. Briana made over 173 international appearances for the United States, leading to a World Cup and 2 Olympic gold medals. She was a founding member of the first professional women's soccer league. Briana also overcame a traumatic brain injury to become one of the nation's foremost thought leaders, and she is a permanent feature in the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. If you have any questions for Briana during her keynote, please navigate to the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. Briana will answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A portion after her speech. Please welcome Briana Scurry.
Hello. I am so honored to be here. I want to say thank you to the Women of Eisenberg for having me. It's been already for me a fantastic experience getting to know all of you and speaking to you in the couple of meetings we had before this amazing event. And I just wanted to say also, thank you so much for having me in particular, because you are now a part of my legacy. I've always liked to think of my legacy as something that I am able to share and give to other people. And without you having me here at this event, that would not be possible. So thank you so much. And I appreciate all your amazing kindness and hospitality, and for inviting me to speak to everyone today. I first want to say that I absolutely loved my time at UMass. I don't know if I could have ever possibly expected or received a better experience that I did at UMass in the time that I was there, not only just playing soccer, but just the whole college experience to me really helped me become who I am today. And I just want to say that it's been so amazing. And I want to hope that all of you who are watching here now, who are attending UMass, even though this last year has been absolutely unbelievably, incredibly hard on some points, but I hope that it's also been very revealing and an experience for you all to learn from, because I know I have definitely learned from it. I normally start speeches like this in a particular way, usually talking about my ascension from being a young child to being able to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. I usually start with talking about my dreams and my goals and my mission and my amazing support that I had from my parents, which is, of course, always going to be something that's so incredibly important and amazing. However, I felt like this year, and many of my speeches that I have to come, I really wanted to try and be someone who could help people in maybe a slightly different way than I have in the past. Because this last year, 2020, was definitely one for the record books. I do want to share with you some of my soccer experience and some of the lessons that I learned and things that I've gone through, some that you may recognize and may have read about, and some that may show some more light, and some that may show you how so much like you I actually am. And some of the things that a lot of you have gone through in this last 12 months, you maybe see yourself reflected in some of the stories I'm going to tell you today. So one of the main stories I wanted to share with you today was the most storied thing or most storied achievement I've had in my career. In 1999, during the Women's World Cup here in the United States, as you all know, our team won that World Cup. And I was fortunate to play an incredibly pivotal role in that victory. We were put up against some amazing opposition, playing against teams all over the world who came to the United States to try and gain glory and to try to achieve the highest level of accolade you could possibly get on the world soccer stage, and that is the World Cup. We had just come off of 1996 Olympic Games, winning the first ever Olympic gold medal for women's soccer, and we were now going into the Women's World Cup, and hosting such an event put a lot of pressure and strain on our team to win. The expectations that we had of ourselves were high as always, but also because we were the home team, the expectations that other people had on us were also very, very prominent in our minds. A lot of people would ask me and have asked me in the past, how do you even, are you able to overcome, how are you able to deal with such amazing pressure, all eyes on you, and knowing that people have such heavy expectation? Well, for me and a lot of my teammates, we use that pressure and that expectation to our advantage. And that's one of the things that I want to bring home to you all, to drive home to you, that a lot of times when you have pressure and expectation on you, you have one of two choices you can make with regards to that pressure. You can either let it crush you like a vice would, and the pressure of a vice, say on your foot or in a car, or you can take that pressure and allow it to turn you into a diamond. Pressure does one of two things. It can either destroy you, or it can create for you and turn you into something that you previously thought was possible or maybe impossible. And during that Women's World Cup, the pressure that we had to win, to excel, although it was very great, was something that a lot of us use, and especially myself. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that pressure is necessary. Pressure is your friend and can be something that lifts you up, something that creates for you, something that you can use to propel yourself forward, not only just to winning world championships or winning soccer games, but also something to help you to achieve, to strive in your careers, to make that next great grade, to try that class that might be a little bit more difficult than you thought. Pressure can help you move forward, can help you see different sides of yourself that you may not have thought were there. And I think that's something that 2020 has taught all of us, is that you can't always know what's going to happen next. And when there's uncertainty in front of you, that can sometimes bring pressure and doubt, and maybe it can disorient you a little bit. But just always know that that pressure can also be something that you can use to your advantage. And we did that. As everyone knows, we won that Women's World Cup, and I was able to make that one penalty kick save that I needed to make. And thank goodness all of my teammates, who also had jobs to do, made each and every one of their kicks. And we went on to win that Women's World Cup and to basically become America's sweethearts overnight. But what you may not know about that Women's World Cup is a story that I've shared with a few appointments and a few different groups that I've spoken to, but I feel like it's definitely relevant for this time now. So a few months after we won that Women's World Cup, I was distracted by all the fame, and people knew me, and all of a sudden, because of the immediate overnight, literally overnight fame that I had, I lost track of what was most important for me at the time in my career. I stopped training like I used to. I started jet setting all over the country, having a great time and really soaking in the fruits of what we had achieved. But I also, as my dad would say, I took my eye off the prize. And I started to do things that were a little bit out of ordinary for me. I wasn't getting the sleep I needed. I wasn't training like I should. I wasn't eating like I should. And over the next few months, I gained 25 pounds. And now if you go back and look at the record books, you'll see that in the 2000 Olympic Games, which was the year after that 99 World Cup, if you look at that roster and you look at that information on that Olympic Games in Sydney, you'll see that I did not play a single minute. I allowed circumstances that changed, even though they were for the better. I mean, let's be honest, who wouldn't want to be famous overnight, right? Who wouldn't want to, enjoy the fruits of their labor and take in whatever it is that one can achieve and one can feel, such as jet setting across the country, being famous, going on shows, going and watching, different shows on Broadway, doing speeches and getting paid money to do that. Who wouldn't want that change? That's a change that I wanted, and I worked very hard to get it. But the one thing I will say is that you cannot forget what it is you are most willing to and most desiring to achieve in your careers and in your life. And that moment, for those few months, I lost track of it. And as a result, I lost it completely. So I went from being someone who had an amazing ascension to the starting goalkeeper for the women's national team, to winning a World Cup championship, to being a superstar literally overnight by making a penalty kick save in front of 90,000 people at the Rose Bowl and 40 million households in the United States, to someone who is sitting on the bench for the Olympic Games the very next year. Now, a lot of people would ask me, Bri, how did you feel about losing your spot? How did you react and respond to that information, to knowing that you weren't going to play within months after winning the biggest award and the biggest tournament of your career? I was angry. And I wasn't angry at myself. I was angry at everybody else. I was angry at my coach for deciding to go with another goalkeeper and play her in that Olympic Games. I was upset with my teammates that I felt should have gone to bat for me and should have stuck up for me and put in a good word with coach. And I was angry at everybody except for the one person who had any power. I was looking out the window, pointing my fingers and blaming other people instead of looking in the mirror and pointing my finger at myself. And it wasn't until getting stripped of my position, watching our team win the silver medal in overtime in the final, until months after that, when I got a photo in the mail from a reporter who was seeking an autograph, a photo of me in training camp February of that year. You see, it's interesting that I didn't notice myself as the culprit. I didn't notice how I looked to other people, to other decision makers, to my coaches, to my teammates, until I saw that photo. I had no idea how far I had fallen. No idea at all. And when I saw that image of me 25 pounds overweight, going up for a cross, the way I looked, I thought to myself, you know what? I wouldn't have chose me either. And at that moment, when I had lost the position that I held so dear, and I saw that photo, I decided enough with the self-sabotage, enough with all this shenanigans and ridiculousness and carrying on that I was doing. And I decided at that moment, you know what? I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to now decide that I control what goes on in my life. I'm going to make a decision that I am going to do everything that I can so that I cannot be denied again. And I realized by looking at that photo that all of the responsibility rested with me. Now, like I said earlier, I speak about this time, this 1 year roughly of my career, not very often. And the reason is because it's painful, but it's such a great lesson. I was down in the mud watching someone else play starting goalkeeper for my team in a position that I thought was mine. But guess what? I was also the reason why I didn't have it anymore. And it was that realization that I was the one that self-sabotaged, that it wasn't all those people out there. I gave the coach no other choice but to not choose me. And then I started thinking to myself, how can I turn this situation around? How can I be better? And I made a decision to become the best Briana Scurry I could be. At that time, I started constructing a plan And I decided that I was going to start, working on my nutrition. I was going to start training more. I was going to do extra training. I was going to start lifting a different way. I was going to start eating better. I was going to start sleeping better. I was going to completely rededicate myself to what I wanted, which is to get my spot back. And as it turned out, in 2001, the new league started. Back then, WUSA League started. And I decided that this is the platform in which I'm going to start my new ascension. And I put away all the stuff I had done in the past, and I decided that I was going to be the best me I could be. And I was drafted on the Atlanta Beat team. I was chosen to go there and be the captain. I decided that I was going to use that platform, that league, that team, to catapult me back on the national team. Every single day, every training session, I got better. I kept being mindful. I kept my eye on the prize. I kept what I wanted in front of me. And I didn't allow myself to get distracted by things that I could not control. I didn't allow myself to get distracted by, maybe my path, thinking back to the team, going back. I wanted to go back. It was like early in I'd say March of 2001 when our league started and our season started. And we had a training camp for the national team. Coach didn't invite me. We had another training camp shortly after that. And I decided I was going to go there and talk to her and basically say to her, I'm sorry. I made mistakes. This is all on me. I want to show you and apologize to you that I deserve to be the starting goalkeeper again. I understand that you had no choice. I put you in a position where you could not pick me. I laid my heart to bear, my soul to bear to her, because that was the only way that I could truly begin again. I had atonement for what I had caused in self-sabotage of my weight, of my work effort, of my physicality, of my leadership. I tarnished all of that stuff, not knowingly, not willingly, not wantingly, but that's just what happened when I was just doing all these different things and letting myself go. And so I know that 2020, maybe there were some things that some of you on this call right now let go. Maybe you were focusing on something in your life, and maybe you decided that, all these other things that are going on outside in the world, with the coronavirus and everything else, it's really getting me down. It's upsetting me what's going on, and you're confused, and there was upheaval, and you were disconnected from your normal way of life. And that's not your fault. That wasn't your own sabotage. That was outside sabotage of your life, of your natural life, of what you were doing and your path. But I'll tell you one thing. You can decide what it is that you want to focus on now. And I would implore you, if you have not made the decision before today to recommit yourself to what it is you want to create in your life, then I would implore you, beg you to begin today to do that. Whether it's self-sabotage, like in my first instance that I mentioned to you, or if it's something that happened, which a lot of coronavirus happened to you. Like something happened to me a few years later, 10 years later. In April of 2010, I was playing in a game on my club team against Indianapolis team, against Philadelphia. And I was in the game coming out for a low ball to my left-hand side. And I was about to scoop the ball up, and their attacking player came from my right-hand side and hit me in my head with her knee. And we both bundled over. And in all honesty, you could actually find that hit, that contact that she made with me on YouTube and see that it didn't look all that bad at the time. That was April 2010. I remember getting up from the ground with her and noticing that everything seemed a little bit fuzzy. Everything seemed a little bit off. But I was willing to continue for the rest of the half, and there was about 8 minutes or so left to go, and I just decided to struggle through it. But the backs of the jerseys, the names on the backs of the jerseys of my teammates in front of me were blurry. Whenever the ball would come towards me, I'd see it like almost like frames coming at me. One was actually up over my head here, and I caught the one in the middle. I had suffered a concussion, and I knew I was in trouble, but I wanted to try to push through that half. And so I did, and the referee blows the whistle for the half, and I go off the pitch, tilting to my left as I'm walking off, and my trainer comes back out to me, and she grabs my hands and looks me right in my eye and says, "Bri, are you okay?" And I told her, "No, I'm not." That was April 25th, 2010. That was the last soccer game I've ever played. I had had concussions in the past. A day or two I'd miss of training with the national team and didn't think anything of that one initially, but then things kept snowballing. All of a sudden I'm like, not having the ability to remember where I'm at, which is typical of a concussion. I didn't have the ability to remember the names or the words or the numbers in a certain order. And I'm sure those of you who've played sports have had these tests done before, where your trainer asks you certain things and says a couple of words and asks you to remember them, and he or she will come back to you. No clue. No idea. We had taken the baseline test, which is the barometer of my own cognition and the way my brain would function before the season started. That was the baseline that we all took. I know those of you on the women's soccer team have taken that test before, and those of you who've played sports anytime recently have done that. I was 20%, 5 times. I was at the end of my career. I was 38 years old, and I was planning on possibly retiring the next year or two, the next season or two. But then all of a sudden, everything changed with that hit, with that fairly innocent looking collision, and the decision made by another player to try to nip in front of a ball completely changed my life. For the next several months, I tried to recover, and it wasn't getting better. And at that moment, I declared season-ending injury, in which ended up being career-ending. For the next 3 years, I was in the wilderness. What's the wilderness, you ask? It's the state of mind that you're in. I was disconnected. For those of you that have ever had a concussion, you know what I mean. It's a state of mind where you're not connected. Especially as an athlete, you feel a certain way in space and time. You feel a certain connection to your body. You feel a certain ability of focus, of concentration, of all these different things that athletes are able to do. You have a heightened level of understanding of your body and of being in space and time, no matter what the sport is. Now imagine having that be a plug-in to the wall and having somebody yank that plug out. Having someone or something change you like that in an instant. And now have that thing that you've always used in your life to get you through things, that thing that allows you to be resilient, whether it's your faith or your mental toughness or whatever it is you call it. Imagine having that thing disconnected. That's what it was like for me for 3 years. For a while there, I didn't think I was going to make it. I was having a hard time sleeping. I was self-medicating. I had these horrific headaches every day. I lived in a studio apartment in New Jersey. I barely recognized the woman who just 11 years before had saved that penalty kick in front of 90,000 people. I actually saw a picture online of me and thought to myself, I know that's me, but it doesn't feel like me anymore. I was completely lost to the point where I was suicidal in 2013. If it weren't for my mom still being alive and the thought of someone having to share with her that I wasn't alive anymore, that one thought, that feeling, that knowledge, that's what saved me. And shortly after that, I decided, you know what? I have to do something. If all I do is go for a walk and get out of my apartment for a little bit every day, if all I do is go for a walk, that's something. So I started doing that. And then before I knew it, going through all this turmoil and going to court to try to get the doctors to help me and everything and get a second opinion and get a surgery done. And you can look it up. You can just Briana Scurry concussion. You can read all about all that I went through. Now, when you think about that, you think about being in the wilderness in the darkness. What does that sound like? Does that sound like 2020 for you? Does that sound like it was just yesterday? Does that sound like this morning? Do you feel lost? Do you feel like you don't know how to get through this? Do you feel like you're alone? That you're in the wilderness? Do you feel that you're disconnected? I will say this. If you feel this way, I understand. I get it. But let me tell you something else. Hang on. Hang on for one more day. And then the next day, and the next day. And if you keep hanging in there and doing what you can control and keeping your mind as best you can on what it is that you want, it'll find you. It found me through my concussion situation, through those 3 years of the wilderness. Someone was introduced to my life who helped me not only get the surgery I needed, but helped me turn my life around. And that's my wife, Krissa. She was introduced to me during my concussion situation. Had I not held on, had I not gotten the concussion in the first place, I would never have met her. That's to say that the absolute seemingly worst condition, situation, circumstance you may find yourself in, there is a silver lining there somewhere. But the only way you're going to be able to enjoy that silver lining is if you hang in and control what you can control. There's so much going on in the world right now, and I know there's so many of you that are struggling. In silence, like I did when I was hurting with my concussion, I barely spoke of how bad it got. And I'm sure there's some of you out there that have not spoken of how you feel. Now is the time to refocus, to recommit yourself. to what it is you want and desire in your life, because right now, there is no better time. Believe it or not, one of the best times to have a new launch or a new inspiration in your life is when things are shitty. Okay. I think I've proven that in my talk to you today. 2 instances of my life that were probably the worst parts of my life, other than losing my parents. Both times. Now, when I look back on them, they were springboards. And I know you can't see it right now. Some of you can't see how you're going to be able to make this time the way you feel. Make it be something that you use to your advantage. And that's okay. You're not supposed to necessarily see it right now. But what I can tell you is it's in there. It's in there for you. You have to believe that. And I don't usually tell stories like this with this much depth and the pain part, because I like to try to keep my speeches upbeat for the most part, right? But I feel like right now is a time where people need someone who can understand the bad day, the down day, the ugly day, maybe the day that's not something you want to talk about. And you may never ever talk about how horrible or how bad or how sad you felt in this last year, but trust me, I get it. And that's okay. You don't have to say anything to anyone, just to yourself. You are the one that has to begin your journey back or forward or further or wherever it is you're going. And no one else needs to know. No one else needs to help you. You start. You take the step. You decide. Control what you can control. And it'll get you where you're going. So, I want to thank the women of Eisenberg for having me. And I am really looking forward now to answering any questions you may have. And I just want to say that one of the things that I am most proud of with regards to when I do speeches is I don't hold back, obviously. And you can ask me anything you want. You can ask me about my personal life. You can ask me about my, soccer career. You can ask me whatever you want. I am an open book. I am here for you. And my mission on this speech is to inspire at least one of you in that crowd. So hopefully we can do that. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening. Questions? Let's go.
Thank you, Briana. To start things off, we have a question from Linguisa. How do we find the mental strength to move forward when we are stuck and disconnected, when we feel hopeless?
Oh, Lisa, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. You gotta dig deep. You have to rely on yourself. And sometimes you have to sit down and you have to write out what you want. You have to really think about it. And I feel oftentimes for me, when I've had issues like that, sometimes meditating helps. Trying to sit still and be quiet for a few minutes and try to think about what it is you want. Because I feel like oftentimes the answers come in quiet and you may not be able to really feel like you're doing anything that's helping you when you're sitting there and trying to be quiet, or you might have a million thoughts come in your head. But I think meditating and writing it down how you feel is a great way to start. And at some point it'll come to you on how you move forward. Next question.
For our next question, how did you focus on what you can control in life and not get distracted by what you couldn't?
Like I said, it's hard. It's hard to. You have to be able to quiet yourself, and you have to be able to take the responsibility on yourself to do that. it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. I mean, especially when it's going crazy, or your life is crazy, or you have a lot of different things that are pulling your attention. But like I said in the question previously, if you can be quiet for a few minutes and just give that time to yourself and nothing else or no one else, you can sometimes find some answers there.
Great. Our next question is, when it comes to staying strong, when do I know when I've reached my limit?
Woo. Okay. Now, the question is, when you've reached your limit of weakness or your limit of strength? What do you think this person means?
Should we go both ways?
Yes. Nice. Well said. Well, you've reached your limit of weakness when you have anger, sorrow, despair. That's when you've gone too far the weak way. When that's all you're feeling all the time, and things that used to bring you joy, you no longer feel joy from them. And that's usually, oftentimes is depression, which I've been through as well. That's when you've reached your limit of sorrow and of weakness. There is no limit of strength, I don't feel. I mean, there's always a higher level to get to. When you feel like you've put a goal out there and then you've achieved, that's the limit of strength, if you will, and something that you can quantify. And I strongly advise you, if you get to that point, when you get to that point, whatever that is, to celebrate and take it in. Because so many times nowadays, people lament things that happen that are bad, and they go on and on and on and give all that energy of themselves to that thing that's bad, that situation, that person, that event. And so infrequently do they celebrate good things the same way they despise bad things. So try to truly give some effort and energy into your victories and celebrate yourself.
Our next question is from Trinity. When you spoke about the wilderness, it has also very much reminded me of the frequent feeling of being a Black woman in America, especially considering the last 4 years and despite the newest election results. How do you cope with being a Black woman today?
Whew. It's been a very trying time for African American women, Black women in this country. It is the end of the road, I think, of that. I think now is a new day, a new dawn with, someone who looks like us, Vice President Kamala Harris, someone who looks like us in a position of power that is truly only one step and one breath away from the presidency. I think now is a new day. I think there's so many more examples of strong Black women doing amazing things. Stacey Abrams comes to mind immediately. I mean, that woman and her crew did the impossible. They made the impossible possible. And so take solace and take energy from the examples that you see around you that are good. Try to see the good examples and be more like those people. Read about Stacey Abrams, read about Kamala Harris. Kamala's written a couple of books. Get in there and read those. You'll find that they have both come against so many different things in their lives and overcome them. And you can always overcome as long as you keep moving forward, as long as you keep hanging in there to the next day, to the next day, to the next. Your path behind you is your path, but it does not have to reflect your future.
Our next question is from Yvonne. Was speaking on your experience, your plan for retirement, or did you have different aspirations? How did your injury affect your retirement plans and career?
Well, my injury affected them greatly. For one, I wasn't completely ready yet to put them into play. And one of the symptoms or one of the issues I had with my concussion was remembering and learning, actually. And so my plan was to maybe potentially be a broadcaster or or something along those lines, maybe. And I did end up doing that in 2011, and it was a complete disaster. I was a broadcaster for the Women's World Cup in 2011 in Germany, and I couldn't remember the names of the players or anything like that. It was so difficult. I cried in my hotel room every day. And so, I mean, it was difficult. And now what I do, because of my concussion, I'm a concussion advocate. That's one of the tenets of my platform now, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. I'm partnering potentially with some amazing partners and some amazing organizations this year to broaden the scope of my advocacy, and also to hopefully be a great example. And I'm also going to be part of the ownership group for the women's soccer team here, the Washington Spirit. So that'll be a nice adventure that I'll be having now, which is not something I thought I'd be doing. And once again, I'd like to thank my wife, Krissa, who I met in the hell that I was in, that's helped me do that.
Our next question is from Padra. How did you begin to identify the activations or triggers of the ways in which self-sabotage showed up or arise? How or in the ways are self-sabotage still prevalent today, if at all?
Wow, that's a good one. Like I said in my story, I was too proud initially to believe that I was the cause of my own demise. It's not every day that you can face that kind of responsibility for yourself, that you're the one that basically wrecked your entire career for a minute. And thank goodness that I was able to rebuild it. And I was only able to rebuild it once I took responsibility. I think what's important is to understand what it is you can control, and then to start to work on that. And I think what will happen is you'll start to see, I know what I need to do. For example, training. I knew I need to train several times a week, and I wasn't doing that. So that one was fairly obvious for me. My situation was obvious on what was wrong, but it may not be the case for you. But you need to get back to what it is you can control. And if you are thinking about and worrying about things that aren't in your sphere of influence and your sphere of control, then you're probably focusing on the wrong things.
Our next question is from Sarah. As a leader, how do you reach people who may be suffering during this pandemic?
Ooh, well, you know what? I mean, this is one way right now. I mean, getting on webinars, Zoom, podcasts, YouTube, whatever. And I feel like one of the ways that people can really contribute, and you can get on social media and you can start your own podcast or start your own YouTube channel, and try to just be someone who's influential. And if you have information or knowledge that you can share, I mean, I've read stories about little kids, raising money to give to the food bank, or giving, going to the food bank and helping them give food away, or the young man who, went to the hospital and asked them what they needed, and with his mom and dad, and they said they needed masks. So they started making masks. I mean, we're talking about so many different ways that you can contribute. You just got to be creative a little bit and find the one that suits you most. It's out there. And if you start thinking about it and swimming around in that space of how can I be of service, you'll figure it out.
Our next question is from Alexis. What are your thoughts on the current U.S. women's national team's fight for pay equity? What can we learn from that in our own careers?
Woo! What are my thoughts? We were fighting this battle of equity in the mid-90s. And here we are still fighting it. I mean, we've come a long way. My generation, my time on the team, we took up the mantle and started fighting and continued. And now, that's part of the role of being on the national team. For those of you who may be aspiring to be on the team, it's one of those things that you have as a responsibility. A is to play amazing ball on the pitch, and B is to move the envelope forward for equality for women all over the world, not just soccer. I mean, there's so many ways that they've influenced in other women in other sports and other, countries and other industries. I think they're in a great position right now. I know that now Cindy Parlow is a former teammate of mine who is amazing, is now the president of US Soccer. Kate Markgraf, who's also a former teammate of mine, is the general manager of the team. So I think we have some people who get it. I know there's going to be always going to be some roadblocks that you have to overcome. But when you're trying to fight and battle to get equality, it's an ongoing thing, because even if they were to get parity and equality with the men, they're going to have to fight to keep it. And so hopefully at this point, it seems that we're possibly on the cusp of getting some pay equality in some way. I know from circumstances like conditions and hotels and playing fields and all that kind of stuff, travel, they've gotten really close to equal, and hopefully this Olympics won't be a roadblock, and hopefully they'll be able to say at some point this year that they've gotten that equality. I do my part talking about it as much as I can to help them, not just those players that are playing now, but the ones that are coming behind them.
Great. That was a great question.
It was.
Hope, as you mentioned earlier, that pressure can be something that destroys or helps you. How would you recommend dealing with internal and external pressures to further push yourself into a positive direction?
Yeah, I mean, it's all in how you look at it. Like I said earlier, a vice and pressure can actually either crush you into dust, or it can crush you and you come out as a diamond. I mean, it can do two things. And I think the difference is you have to decide how you're going to handle it. And it's hard. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think one of the things that I'm blessed with is my ability to flip that coin and to my advantage, but that's not natural necessarily. It's something I learned over time, because, for example, feeling pressure, right? When you see an athlete, for example, last night was the college football national championship. The biggest stage there is for college football, everybody's eyes on. The players who are hyped and ready and excited about the opportunity, grasp it, and they're like, I was born for this. I was raised for this. I was made for this huge moment in my life, and here it is. And the ones that are able to function and go back to their training and do what they need to do, no matter how high the stakes are the ones that have basically decided before they got there. They're like, I'm going to do this. This is how. It's going to be hard. It's going to come against me sometimes, but I'm going to achieve it. And you have to not let it pull you apart. If anything, you got to let the pressure, make you more solid and stronger, and say, you know what, I'm going to use this to my advantage. I'm not going to let it slice me open.
We have time for about 3 more questions. This next question is from Wayne. The sad truth is that we live in a racist country and have since, oops, it popped away. The sad truth is that we live in a racist country and have since the days of slavery. How do you deal with that on a daily basis, and how do you not succumb to the bitterness or anger about it?
Whose question was that?
That was from Wayne Coffee.
Wayne! Hi, Wayne. For those of you that don't know, Wayne Coffee is my author who is writing a book with me. We will be releasing that book next year during the anniversary of Title IX. So we've talked about this quite a bit, especially recently. It is a heavy burden to overcome. And I feel like in my heart, I just want to be a great example of someone who has overcome. And like I've said with Wayne a few times, I didn't necessarily feel like I was being discriminated against when I was younger. And I think part of the reason why I didn't feel that way is because I didn't want to admit that that was what was going on. And I didn't want that to be something that hindered me. And I didn't want that to win. And I just pushed on, pushed on. But as I look back on it now, especially since, Wayne and I have been writing this book, I mean, going through my childhood and through my career and thinking about things now as a 49-year-old as opposed to a 19-year-old, seeing some areas in my life where I probably was discriminated against. And now in this current environment, it's not okay. We're finally having the conversations that we couldn't have 5 years ago. I mean, in my own household, we have these conversations. I talk to my wife, Krissa, all the time about certain phrases and certain words and certain things that happen, and we discuss it and we talk about it with our kids, and their experiences, what they're feeling and how they're thinking. And so the good news is we are now finally in a place where we're actually able to have a conversation about race. And it's more real now than it's ever been, that conversation. And there's a lot of things to do and a lot of things to change. But I feel as someone who, an African-American gay woman who played soccer and is in the National African-American Museum of History and Culture, I mean, I'm a big anomaly. And if I can help other people see me and maybe become something that they're not expecting they could be, or someone said they couldn't be, then I'm all for that.
Our next question is from Chava. What is your favorite memory from your time at UMass?
Oh. Well, I have to say that, interestingly enough, some of my favorite memories are playing on Upper Boyden Field, behind Boyden. I don't even know if that field's there anymore. It may not be, but I mean, playing there and having, students walking back to their dorms from class and stopping and sitting on the hill and watching us play, and feeling that energy of being the home team and my experience, on the pitch there, with Coach Jim Rudy and my teammates was truly one of the best soccer experiences I've ever had. I mean, it helped that we were really good. That's always nice. But I mean, I had a lot of great experiences at UMass. I mean, going in the spring, actually every spring, because, we would have like 18 feet of snow on the ground, and then spring would come and it would be 40 degrees out and everybody would be wearing shorts and stuff. And I always thought that was hilarious and awesome. And spring at UMass, there's few things better than that.
That field actually made me want to come to UMass Amherst. I was driving past it and I was like, oh, everybody looks so happy. I love this place.
I know, right? Exactly. I'm glad that's still the case. So.
Yes. The chat let us know that it is still there, and it is called the Garber Field.
Garber Field. Oh, look, the lacrosse coach, right?
Yes.
Got it.
For our final question, it comes from Kyra. After a tough year, what are you looking forward to, and what are your intentions or goals for 2021?
Woo! Well, I am hopefully going to be able to participate as part of ownership with the Washington Spirit this year, and hopefully we'll have a season and it'll go, somewhat normal, and maybe we'll have a fan or two at the game. That would be great. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's something that my wife Chris and I have been looking forward to doing. And busting through this book with Wayne. Hey, Wayne. Getting through that and getting that out there and promoting that next year. I mean, everybody's like, you should write a book, and it's been a lot of fun, but whew, my goodness. Hopefully it'll be a bestseller, right, Wayne? That's on you. Now that everybody knows you're on this webinar, better get to the business. So that's really exciting for me. And honestly, one of my huge goals this year is just to be a better wife and mother too. because that's something that I'm always going to try to be better at. And, you know, it's just something that I love. So hopefully you'll get better at that this year in 2021.
Thank you, Briana. Unfortunately, that was probably the quickest hour of our lives.
Yay! That's a good sign.
We really appreciate your authenticity and honesty in spending your time with us. Everybody in the chat is saying thank you. I don't think thank you is a strong enough word. And it's a great way to start off WI Week and set the tone for future conversations and connections.
I just want to say I want to wish you all the best in the world. You ladies have been absolutely outstanding, incredibly professional, and very knowledgeable and organized, and I appreciate that and respect that. And I expect big things from every single one of you, and I know I will see that. And just remember, you know, it gets hard sometimes, and that doesn't mean it's not worth it.
Thank you so much. I wish we could have like a big round of applause, like the button.
I just imagine that you're applauding, like standing ovation. How about that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.